All right, it's 2 o'clock, so we'll start the next panel. So to introduce the next panel is Andy Wilkinson, who is artist in residence here in the Southwest Collection Special Collections Library. He's a musician, songwriter, playwright, sort of man extraordinaire. So he's going to introduce the panel.
Speaking of a man extraordinaire, Kurt Caswell, this is one of my favorite things all year, and I'm just so sorry this is happening during Lubbock Lights, so I'm going to put in a plug for our show tonight, 7 o'clock, Allen Theater. This will be closed, right, by 7 o'clock? You got no excuse. Show up. If you're students with a valid ID, you're free. If you're not students, you're rich enough to afford the 23 bucks. It's going to be a great show. It's all about creativity, creative process, and I have the privilege and the responsibility and sometimes the terror of teaching a class in the unteachable subject of creative process in the Honors College. And so I suggested to Diane Warner, Dr. Warner, that I had some students that would make a really cool presentation today for this conference. We're going to start with my student, Sarah Mechref, and Marilyn Mathew. Mathew or Matthews?
Mathew.
Mathew, there we go. I saw this at the Women of Excellence Awards. It took me by surprise. I had no idea that Farah was going to be involved, and I looked up and I told my daughter who's with me, "That's Farah from my class." And then they just knocked my socks off. So it was cold that night. I had to go out without socks. It was terrible. Farah, Marilyn, I'm not going to say anything more till you get up and do your thing.
Our worlds met at an interview. I had driven 6 hours.
And I had driven down the street.
Hi, my name is Marilyn.
Farah, nice to meet you.
I'm a senior, wanting to be a physician, obviously, taking French, biology, and I'm in this program called IB.
2 months later, we happened to sit next to each other at orientation.
First one of the summer, because you know you gotta take Cassadante's chemistry class.
So where are you living next year?
343 Murray is me.
No way, I'm your hallmate to be.
Well, tell me more about you.
My name means joy in Arabic, and as you can see by my hijab, I'm a practicing Muslim. My favorite holiday is Halloween, but no kids ever show up to my house.
I was born in Arizona and moved to Texas when I was 5. My mom is a high school math teacher, and my parents are devout Catholics. I've danced since the age of 6, so you can never get the boogie out of me.
I have a sister who looks just like me, hair crazy as can be. Advocacy is my hobby, but movies are my passion.
I have a brother who looks just like me, also with hair as crazy as can be. I consider failures successes and cry over spilled milk. But
I'm not a Muslim, and I don't wear the hijab. In fact, my name isn't Farah. It's Marilyn Elizabeth Mathew.
and I'm not actually Catholic. I can't dance to save a life. My name isn't Marilyn. It's Farah Mechref. We live in a world where physical features define us, where identities are presupposed. You see, my parents immigrated from the Middle East and now live right down the street. I love the faith of Islam, but I don't wear a hijab. I advocate most definitely, and my favorite holiday is Halloween.
And my parents immigrated from India and now reside in Austin. Though I'm an agnostic at heart, my favorite memory as a child was being dragged to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. I danced Mathew for 12 years, so you can never get the boogie out of me.
But despite our differences in the places we've come from, the places we've been, and the places we will go,
We first found comfort in the fact that there was a girl who spoke French
and liked biology,
and wanted to be a physician,
we continue to find comfort in the fact that she was a feminist,
and she believed in choices.
she believed in reform,
She believed that climate change really does exist.
she believed in equality,
She believed that we can make a difference in this world.
she believed that love is love.
And she believed that y'all means all.
I met a girl,
And I met a girl.
and neither one of us cared who the other was, because in our America, souls don't have to be a certain race, creed, color, or faith to find their mate. Thank you.
We're going to do something a little different before we do the next presentation. If you have a question or two,
So we kind of, our story began where we both interviewed for early acceptance to medical school back when we were seniors in high school. So we actually had the opportunity to meet each other 4 years ago. So at the event, we just kind of interacted with one another and didn't think anything of it.
In terms of the poem, so one of my favorite TED Talks is Sarah Kay on TED Talks, and she has an entire talk about what she would talk to her daughter, but she also has a dual poem with Sarah Kay and Phil Kay, I think it is, and they have kind of a back and forth poem, slam poetry type thing, which is just beautiful to watch, and I kind of used that as inspiration for us.
And we went through this phase in college where whenever we'd introduce ourselves to people, people would immediately assume that she was Farah and I was Marilyn, because, Marilyn kind of fits the identity, Marilyn Mathew, somebody who's stereotypically white, somebody who stereotypically has lighter skinned hair, and then Marilyn fits the stereotypical identity of someone who would have a foreign name like Farah Mechref. So we always kind of had this idea where we should do something where it kind of shocks people and makes them think, just because something is what it as it appears doesn't mean it is what it seems.
Other questions? Have you put it on video yet?
We have one of our friends, Zach Roca, has videotaped it for us, so we have it on
It's
YouTube.
on YouTube.
It's on YouTube?
Yes.
Under?
It's called Find Your Mate.
If there are no more, then thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, in that class, Farah also is able to correct my pronunciation of one of my favorite words that I can't pronounce, which is Ladaka.
Ladaka.
Ladaka. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're from here and you talk like this, it's hard to pronounce some words, but so this is the fun I get to have in that class. I also get to have fun with students discovering new things, and our next presenter is a student in this semester's class, Caroline Gressett. Say that right?
Yep, Gressett.
Okay, good. Other than the fact she's a great student and participates in class, which those of us who are teachers value maybe above all else except showing up. Right? We got to have people participate, or we're dead. It's like being a comedian with no one laughing, They may be laughing, actually, I think, but anyway, participation is important. Caroline is good at that. But we, early in our semesters, each semester, we come to the Southwest Collection. Dr. Warner and Kristen take us, they bring out items from the Sowell collection, and they array them on the tables in the reading room. So we focus on the journals, because one of the things we work on in our class is the journal as a process, not a product, a way to help you explore your creative process. So we lay those out, and we talk a little bit about the people that the journals are from, and our students have a chance to look at them early in the semester. So it liberates their ideas of what a journal might have to be. It's not just a date book. It's not just a dear diary. It's not, it's something, it's a living organism. And I think it's safe to say that the student who was most impressed by that and reacted the most touched, I should say, by looking at those journals was Caroline. And so we had a nice visit about that, and I just wanted her to talk in an informal way with you about the value of those journals, and by extension, the value of that whole archive as something that is not just useful to go out and make notes on for a paper, but it is an inspirational thing alongside that. So please welcome Caroline. And can you tell them what your classification is?
I can do that,
Please
yes.
do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Woo. Hi, everyone. So whenever he asked me to do this, he kind of mentioned to just basically relay what I said that day of. So I will be talking, I guess, a little bit about myself as well. But I'm a junior, and I'll graduate a semester early this December. I'm a Spanish major with a minor in legal studies. So I guess you could say that I'm pre-law, and I'll be taking the LSAT in September, and I hope to go to law school the next August after my semester off. But like Professor Wilkinson said, I took a very profound interest to the Sowell collection because of the journals there, and that has to do with my background in journals. The title for my talk right now is called Journey Through Journals, but if I could give it a subtitle, I would talk about how a 21-year-old relates to a war veteran whose name is Doug Peacock. He was a really cool guy, but I'll get back to that later. My interest in journals stems from my personal experience with journals. I started writing when I was about 10 years old. Everyone in here seems like to be a little bit younger, so you might remember the Scholastic book fairs had those like little journals that were that big, and they had the locks on them with the keys. Well, those were my obsession, and I bought them and I wrote in them almost religiously every day throughout the latter half of my elementary experience in the beginning of junior high and high school, before all the stresses and extracurricular activities catch up to you when you become older. And then I stopped for a period of time throughout high school, and then I started back up again in college, and I've been doing it pretty regularly since then. And I've also even dallied in different kinds of writing with like blogs or just creative writing. And I get this sort of interest in journaling from my parents, which I also talked to Professor Wilkinson about. My parents met when my mom and dad were in high school, and then he got his GED and dropped out of high school and went to the Army. So growing up, we would read the letters that they wrote back and forth to each other. And so going through the Sowell collection for me was a little cathartic, because it reminded me of being younger and being able to read the letters between my parents and see what my mom did on a normal day to try to normalize, what my dad was going through, but then also hearing the sort of worries and struggles that my dad was going through, thinking about, what am I supposed to do when I come back from the Army with no degree and no high school diploma in reality? So that was something that was extremely nostalgic for me to do, because it kind of took me back to my childhood. So going back to what I said before, how does a 21-year-old relate to a war vet? Well, this war veteran, Doug Peacock, he wrote as a way to deal with his PTSD after the war, and I only remember this because I read them and I was super interested in it. And that was his way to journal. And for me, journaling was a way to cope with my anxiety that I had. It's something that I was diagnosed with when I was 18 years old, but my parents would argue that I've had for a longer time than that. And so, not to say that our anxieties are the same, because his experience were definitely different from my experiences, but I'm someone who believes that everyone has human emotions and that all of those should be valid to an extent. And so I think that emotions and thoughts are a way to connect to people. And so both the war veteran and I, journaled for some of the same purposes. And so that made his collection specifically interesting to me, and why I found such an interest in it. So from this, what I would like y'all to take away is that the human condition, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, love, fear, all of those sort of things, they surpass race, they surpass gender, they surpass religion, they surpass age, where you're from, what kind of lifestyle you had. Collections like this are a way to connect people and to find that you're not alone in what you're feeling and what you're thinking, and that it is a way for us to also learn about ourselves, because in this collection, I was able to find a little bit of myself on a minuscule scale in someone else's journals. But these collections are a way that you can go and read about other people, find yourself in them, find out about them, and also see how their experiences can affect your life, and possibly vice versa. These collections are important, like I've said, because they help you share thoughts and ideas, and it can surpass boundaries and languages and all the other sort of things that society likes to create as barriers. It's also a way to pass down knowledge to younger generations who probably don't understand what it's like to talk without a cell phone and has to read letters between their parents and be like, what? This was texting? And it also lets you know that you just aren't alone, and that we're all just people trying to get through this crazy thing called life, and that we all do it differently, and no way is better than the other. But through journaling, maybe we can get a peek into other people's ways of life and be able to share that and grow from that as well. And so I kind of had a parting quote, one that I really like from one of my favorite journalists of all time. It's a little long, so bear with me. It's an odd idea for someone like me to keep a diary or a journal, not only because I have never done so before, but because it seems to me that neither I, nor for that matter anyone else, will be interested in the unbosomings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Still, what does it matter? I want to write, but more than that, I want to bring out all kinds of things that lie buried in my heart. And that's from Anne Frank. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much to that last panel. The 2:30 break in the schedule is actually a break up because the next panelist, Tony Jensen, couldn't be here. So we're done for the day, actually. Great to have you here, and I hope you come back tomorrow at 9:30. There's coffee and I think a little refreshment in the Globe Room here in the morning. And then, excuse me, the first panel starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. So it'd be great to see you at that time. Thanks a lot.